Hello guys, today is History of Canada, so here we go. The history of Canada covers the period from the arrival of the Paleo-Indians thousands of years ago to the present day. Prior to European colonization, the lands encompassing present-day Canada were inhabited for millennia by Indigenous peoples, with distinct trade networks, spiritual beliefs, and styles of social organization. Some of these older civilizations had long faded by the time of the first European arrivals and have been discovered through archaeological investigations. From the late 15th century, French and British expeditions explored, colonized, and fought over various places within North America in what constitutes present-day Canada. The colony of New France was claimed in 1534 with permanent settlements beginning in 1608. France ceded nearly all its North American possessions to the United Kingdom in 1763 after the French defeat in the Seven Years' War. The now British province of Quebec was divided into Upper and Lower Canada in 1791 and reunified in 1841. In 1867, the province of Canada was joined with two other British colonies of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia through confederation, forming a self-governing entity named Canada. The new country expanded by incorporating other parts of British North America, finishing with Newfoundland and Labrador in 1949. Although responsible government had existed in Canada since 1848, Britain continued to set its foreign and defence policies until the end of the First World War. The passing of the Statute of Westminster in 1931 recognised that Canada had become co-equal with the United Kingdom. After the Constitution was patriated in 1982, the final vestiges of legal dependence on the British Parliament were removed. Canada currently consists of 10 provinces and 3 territories and is a parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy with Queen Elizabeth II as its head of state. Over centuries, elements of Indigenous, French, British and more recent immigrant customs have combined to form a Canadian culture that has also been strongly influenced by its linguistic, geographic and economic neighbour, the United States. Since the conclusion of the Second World War, Canadians have supported multilateralism abroad, and archaeological and indigenous genetic evidence indicate that North and South America were the last continents into which humans migrated. 1. During the Wisconsin glaciation, 50,000 to 17,000 years ago, falling sea levels allowed people to move gradually across the Bering Land Bridge Beringia, from Siberia into northwest North America. 2. At that point, they were blocked by the Laurentide ice sheet that covered most of Canada, confining them to Alaska and the Yukon for thousands of years. 3. The exact dates and routes of the peopling of the Americas are the subject of an ongoing debate. 4. 5. By 16,000 years ago, the glacial melt allowed people to move by land south and east out of Beringia and into Canada. 6. The Haida Gwaii Islands, Old Crow Flats, and the Bluefish Caves contain some of the earliest Paleo-Indian archaeological sites in Canada. 7. 8. 9. Ice Age hunter-gatherers of this period left lithic flake-fluted stone tools and the remains of large butchered mammals. The North American climate stabilized around 8000 BCE, 10,000 years ago. Climatic conditions were similar to modern patterns, however. The receding glacial ice sheets still covered large portions of the land, creating lakes of meltwater. 10. Most population groups during the Archaic periods were still highly mobile hunter-gatherers. 11. However, individual groups started to focus on resources available to them locally. Thus, with the passage of time, there is a pattern of increasing regional generalization, i.e., Paleo-Arctic Plain and maritime archaic traditions. 11. The woodland cultural period dates from about 2000 BCE to 1000 CE and is applied to the Ontario, Quebec, and maritime regions. 12. The introduction of pottery distinguishes the woodland culture from the previous archaic stage inhabitants. The Laurentian-related people of Ontario manufactured the oldest pottery excavated to date in Canada. 13. The Hopewell tradition is an indigenous culture that flourished along American rivers from 300 BCE to 500 CE. At its greatest extent, the Hopewell exchange system connected cultures and societies to the peoples on the Canadian shores of Lake Ontario. 14. Canadian expression of the Hopewellian peoples encompasses the Point Peninsula, Saugeen, and Laurel complexes. 15. The eastern woodland areas of what became Canada were home to the Algonquin and Iroquoian peoples. The Algonquin language is believed to have originated in the western plateau of Idaho or the plains of Montana and moved with migrants eastward. 16. Eventually extending in various manifestations all the way from Hudson Bay to what is today Nova Scotia in the east and as far south as the Tidewater region of Virginia. 17. Speakers of Eastern Algonquin languages included the Micmac and Abenaki of the maritime region of Canada and likely the extinct Beothuk of Newfoundland. 18. 19. The Ojibwa and other Anishinaabe speakers of the Central Algonquin languages retain an oral tradition of having moved to their lands around the western and central Great Lakes from the sea, likely the Atlantic coast. 20. According to oral tradition, the Ojibwa formed the Council of Three Fires in 796 CE with the Ottawa and the Potawatomi. 21. The Five Nations of the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, were centered from at least 1000 CE in northern New York, but their influence extended into what is now southern Ontario and the Montreal area of modern Quebec. They spoke varieties of Iroquoian languages. 22. The Iroquois Confederacy, according to oral tradition, was formed in 1142 CE. 23. 24. In addition, there were other Iroquoian-speaking peoples in the area, including the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, the Erie, and others. On the Great Plains, the Cree Nihil, who spoke a closely related Central Algonquin language. The Plains Cree language depended on the vast herds of bison to supply food and many of their other needs. 25. To the northwest were the peoples of the Nadine languages, which include the Athapascan-speaking peoples and the Tlingit, who lived on the islands of southern Alaska and northern British Columbia. The Nadine language group is believed to be linked to the Yeniseian languages of Siberia. 26. The Dene of the Western Arctic may represent a distinct wave of migration from Asia to North America. The interior of British Columbia was home to the Salishan language groups such as the Shuswap, Secwepamc, Okanagan and Southern Athabascan language groups, primarily the Dakelkaria, and the Silkuan. 27. The inlets and valleys of the British Columbia coast sheltered large distinctive populations, such as the Haida, Kwakwaka'wakw and Nuchanulth, sustained by the region's abundant salmon and shellfish. 27. These peoples developed complex cultures dependent on the western red cedar that included wooden houses, seagoing, whaling and war canoes and elaborately carved potlatch items and totem poles. 27. In the Arctic archipelago, the distinctive Paleo-Eskimos known as Dorset peoples, whose culture has been traced back to around 500 BCE, were replaced by the ancestors of today's Inuit by 1500 CE. 28. This transition is supported by archaeological records and Inuit mythology that tells of having driven off the Tunyador first inhabitants. 29. Inuit traditional laws are anthropologically different from Western law. Customary law was non-existent in Inuit society before the introduction of the Canadian legal system. 30. The End. History of Canada. So hit the like and subscribe for more history.